in a humble gesture Janimjaya, bowed down to Narayana and Nara, the revered male beings, and also to the goddess Saraswati. With reverence he invoked the word Jaya. Janimjaya's curiosity was piqued as he asked his wise teacher Vasampayana about the past of his great-grandfathers. How did they pass their days undiscovered in the city of Virata? He inquired, and how did the noble Draupadi, devoted to her lords and ever admiring the deity, spend her days unrecognized? Vasampayana began to recount the tale after obtaining boons from the god of justice. Yudhishthira returned to the asylum and shared with the Brahmanas all that had transpired. He then restored to a regenerate Brahma the churning staff and fire sticks he had lost with a deep sense of responsibility. Yudhishthira called upon his younger brothers and spoke, "Exile from our kingdom we have spent 12 years. The 13th year has now arrived, and it is hard to endure. Therefore, Arjuna, son of Kunti, choose a secluded spot where we may pass our days unobserved by our enemies." Arjuna pondered for a moment before responding, "Thanks to Dharma's boon, we shall roam freely, undiscovered by men. However, for the sake of residence, I shall suggest some delightful and secluded spots: Anchala, Chidamatsya, Shurasna, Patakara, Desarna, Navarashtra, Malasalva, Yugandhara, Sarashtra, Avanti, and Kantarashtra are all beautiful and abundant in corn. Which of these regions would you choose, O king?" Yudhishthira's eyes sparkled as he replied, "It is indeed so what the adorable Lord of all creatures has decreed must come to pass. After consulting together, we shall select a delightful, auspicious, and agreeable region for our abode, where we may live free from fear." He then turned his attention to the aged Virata, king of the Matsyas, who was virtuous, powerful, charitable, and liked by all, even in the city of Virata. "O child," Yudhishthira said, "we shall spend this year entering his service. Tell me, ye sons of the Kuru race, in what capacities you will present yourselves before the king of the Matsyas?" The brothers conferred among themselves, and Arjuna proposed a plan. "O God among men," he asked Yudhishthira, "what service will you take on in Virata's kingdom? You are mild, charitable, modest, virtuous, and firm in promise. What will you do, O king afflicted?" As the sun rose over the kingdom of Virata, Bhima stood before Yudhishthira with a mischievous glint in his eye. "I have a plan, dear brother," he said, his voice low and confident. "I will disguise myself as a cook named Vallabha, skilled in the art of culinary magic. I'll prepare curries that will make even the king's taste would sing, and my loads of wood will leave everyone in awe." Bhima's words were laced with excitement, and Yudhishthira couldn't help but smile. "But it's not just about cooking, dear brother," Bhima continued. "I'll show off my strength by carrying enormous loads, and the king won't be able to resist my charms. The servants will bow down to me as if I were a king myself, and with control over all the vines and drinks, I'll make sure everyone in the palace is well and happy." Bhima's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he outlined his plan. Yudhishthira listened intently, nodding his head from time to time. "And what about Dhananjaya, our brave Arjuna?" he asked. "What office will he hold in the kingdom of Virata?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Bhima knew that Yudhishthira was eager to hear more. Just then Arjuna walked into the room, his eyes scanning the space as if searching for something. "For someone, I'll disguise myself as one of the neuters," he said, finally, his voice calm but firm. "Brahanala will be my name, and I'll wear bangles on my wrists and a braid hanging from my head." Arjuna's words were laced with a hint of sadness, but Bhima knew that his brother was determined to follow through with the plan. As they spoke, Yudhishthira couldn't help but think back to the days when Arjuna had fought alongside Krishna in the forest of Kandava. The divine Agni himself had appeared before them, and Arjuna had vanquished the fearsome Nagas and Rakshasas with ease. "You are like a sun among heat-giving bodies," Yudhishthira said, his voice filled with admiration. "A Brahmana is the best of all bites, but you, Arjuna, are the greatest warrior I know." Arjuna's eyes met Bhima's, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Two brothers bound together by their loyalty to each other and to their kingdom. Then with a quiet nod, Arjuna turned back to Yudhishthira, his voice steady as he outlined his plan to conceal himself in the palace of Virata. "I'll live at the wing." In the midst of their exile, Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, gathered his brothers around him. Their eyes sparkled with excitement as they discussed their plan to disguise themselves and live incognito in the kingdom of Varadnakila. The brave and skilled warrior spoke up first. "I shall become the keeper of the horses," he declared, his voice filled with conviction. "Under the name of Granthika, I will tend to the majestic steeds of King Virata. My knowledge and skill in training and treating horses are unmatched. Even the most spirited colts and mares will be tamed by my gentle touch. With a mischievous glint in his eye, he added, "No one will ever recognize me as I done this new role Yudhishthira." Nodded in approval, his eyes shining with pride. Next to speak was Sahadeva, the wise and gentle brother. "I shall become a keeper of the kine," he said softly. "Under the name of Tantriple, I will care for the sacred cows of King Virata. My expertise in milking and understanding their nature will make me an invaluable asset to the kingdom." His voice filled with devotion, he added formally, "I was often tasked with looking after our own kine, and I have a deep knowledge of this work." The brothers' discussion turned to their beloved wife, Draupadi. Yudhishthira's face clouded with concern as he asked, "Krishna, dear one, how will you live in disguise? You are a princess, delicate and young, unacquainted with any kind of womanly work." His words were laced with worry, but Draupadi's quick wit and courage soon put his mind at ease. "He shall become a Sarantri," she said, her voice steady, "a skilled hairdresser. I will enter the service of Queen Suisha under this guise. No one will recognize me as the queen of the Pandavas." With a determined smile, she added, "I will serve the queen and bring joy to her household as they finalize their plans." Yudhishthira's eyes shone with gratitude towards his wife. "You have always been a source of strength and inspiration for us," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "We entrust you to live virtuously, to conduct yourself in such a way that sinful men may not be gladdened by gazing at you with their plans in place." The brothers and Draupadi bid each other farewell, ready to embark on this new chapter of their lives. As they went their separate ways, Yudhishthira's words echoed in his heart, "May we emerge from this disguise with honor, our virtues unblemished." The sun was setting over the tranquil landscape as Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, stood before his brothers. "We have spoken of our roles in the days ahead," he said, "but I must also share my thoughts with you." He turned to Dharmiya, their wise priest who had been watching over them with a keen eye. "Tell us, Dharmiya, what advice do you have for us?" Yudhishthira asked. The old man's eyes twinkled as he began to speak in measured tones. "Your arrangements for the Brahmanas and our friends are excellent," he said, "but my kings, I must caution you on one matter, the protection of Draupadi." Yudhishthira nodded gravely, his mind already racing with strategies to ensure their sister's safety. "Dharmiya, continued to live in a royal household is not for the faint of heart. You will have to tread carefully, avoiding every fault and mistake." He paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing. "When you arrive at the palace, be respectful and courteous. Do not presume to offer counsel without being asked, nor should you sit on a seat that might raise alarm among malicious people. Pay homage in season and silently sit beside the king, for he takes umbrage at those who babble excessively." Dharmiya's words hung in the air like a gentle breeze, carrying with them the weight of wisdom. Arjuna listened intently, his eyes never leaving Dharmiya's face. He knew that living among their cousins, the Kauravas, would be a delicate balancing act requiring great care and subtlety. The old priest's words were like a map guiding them through the treacherous waters of court politics. Dharmiya's eyes seemed to bore into Arjuna's very soul as he spoke. "On a person obtains the good graces of a king by behaving agreeably to his wishes. Do not reveal lies told by the king, nor should you regard yourself as learned or superior." His words dripped with caution like honey poured slowly and deliberately. As the evening wore on, Dharmiya's counsel painted a vivid picture in their minds, one of respect, humility, and careful consideration for the king's dignity. He who is ever mindful of the king's welfare and is neither exhilarated by reward nor depressed by disgrace is alone worthy of dwelling in a royal household. He concluded. The Pandavas listened, absorbing Dharmiya's wisdom like parched travelers drinking from an oasis. They knew that their journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with the old priest's guidance they felt a sense of hope and determination. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Yudhishthira nodded in understanding, his heart filled with it. As the sun began to set on the horizon, the Pandavas, those mighty warriors, girded their waists with swords and prepared for a new journey. They had been living in inaccessible hills and forest fastnesses, but now they were determined to recover their kingdom, which lay beyond the river Arjuna, the great archer, led the way, his eyes scanning the landscape as he guided his companions through the Yakulama and Shurasana regions. To their right lay the country of the Panchalas, while to their left was that of the Dasarnas. The Pandavas had been living as hunters for so long that they looked one and were birds, but beneath their raw exterior burned a fierce determinationness. They emerged from the forest. Krishna addressed Yudhishthira, saying, "We see footpaths here in various fields. From this it appears that Virata's metropolis is still at a distance. Pass we hear what part of the night is still left, for great is my fahe." Yudhishthira replied, "O Dhananjaya of Virata's race, do thou take up Panchalai and carry her. Just on emerging from this forest we arrive at the city. Arjuna quickly took Draupadi in his arms as if she were a precious burden and carried her towards the city. As they approached the metropolis, Yudhishthira asked Arjuna where to deposit their weapons before entering the city. If they entered with their bows and swords, they would surely excite the alarm of the citizens who would recognize them as the Pandavas. Arjuna suggested hiding their arms in a nearby cemetery beneath the branches of a mighty sama tree. The tree was accessible, surrounded by an out-of-the-way forest teeming with beasts and snakes, and its location near a dreary cemetery made it unlikely that anyone would stumble upon their hidden cave. Yudhishthira agreed to this plan, and Arjuna prepared to deposit the boughs. With a few swift motions, Arjuna loosened the string of his Gandhava bow, which had conquered gods and men alike on countless battlefields. Yudhishthira unfastened the string at his own bow, while Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva did the same with their respective bows together. They stowed away their long swords' quivers and arose in the sama tree. Nakula carefully tied the boughs to sturdy branches, ensuring that they would not break or be affected by the rain. To make it seem as though a body lay hidden beneath the tree, they hung out a corpse, an old woman whose age was said to be 12 years. The Pandavas told the shepherds and cowards who asked about the corpse that it was their mother's remains. As Yudhishthira journeyed towards the enchanting city of Virata with his brothers, he couldn't help but think of the divine Durga, the supreme goddess of the universe, born to Yesoda and fondly known as the one who received boons from Narayana. She was a fierce protector and bestower of prosperity. Yudhishthira's mind overflowed with praise for this majestic goddess, adorned in celestial garlands and robes, armed with a scimitar and shield. As he thought of Durga, his heart swelled with devotion. He invoked her name, reciting various epithets from revered hymns. "Salutations to you, O giver of boons," he said. "You are identical with Krishna, the maiden who observed the vow of Brahmacharya. Your body shining like the newly risen sun." Yudhishthira's words poured forth in a poetic torrent. "Your 4 hands and 4 faces shine brightly. Your fair hips and deep bosom are a sight to behold. You wear bangles made of emeralds and sapphires and excellent bracelets on your upper arm." As he praised Durga, Yudhishthira's thoughts turned to her many avatars. "You are Padma, the consort of Narayana," he said. "Your true form is pure like the Brahmacharya. While your face is as beautiful as Sankarsana's, and your 2 long arms shine with strength." He described her various attributes: a vessel, a lotus, a bell, a news, a bow, and a discus. "You are the only female in the universe who possesses purity," he said. Yudhishthira's devotion reached its peak as he addressed Durga directly. "O goddess, you shine with a face that challenges the moon in beauty. With your excellent diadem and braid, robes made of snake bodies, and brilliant girdle around your hips, you are like the Mandara mountain encircled by snakes." He invoked her many names: Jaya, Vijaya, Kala, and Durga. "Grant me victory, O goddess," he said. "Show me your mercy and be the source of blessings to me." As Yudhishthira finished his hymn, the divine Durga revealed herself to him. Approaching the king, she spoke in a voice that echoed through his mind: "O mighty armed king, listen to my words. Having vanquished and slain the ranks of the Kauravas through my grace, victory in battle will soon be thine." She promised Yudhishthira that he would regain his kingdom free from troubles, and that his brothers would share in his happiness. The goddess continued: "Through my grace, joy and health will be thine." Those who recite. In the grand court of King Virata, a majestic figure emerged from the shadows. His name was Yudhishthira, and he was none other than the illustrious lord of man, renowned for his strength, beauty, and prowess. Like a celestial being shrouded in clouds, he appeared before the king, his presence radiating an aura of greatness. King Virata, seated on his throne, gazed at Yudhishthira with curiosity and admiration. He beheld the son of Pandu, whose face shone like the full moon, hidden behind a veil of clouds. The king's eyes sparkled with wonder as he pondered the identity of this mysterious stranger. "Who is this man, so regal in bearing?" King Virata asked his counselors and nobles. "He cannot be a Brahmana, nor does he resemble any ordinary mortal. His curly locks have undergone the sacred investiture, indicating that he is one destined for greatness. As the king deliberated, Yudhishthira approached him with confidence, his eyes shining like those of an elephant en route drawn to a gathering of lotuses. O great King Virata, he said, I am a Brahmana who has lost everything and come to you seeking sustenance. I desire to live among your people, acting under your command. King Virata's face lit up with pleasure as he welcomed Yudhishthira into his court. You are welcome, O child, he said. Accept the position you seek, and may our friendship flourish. The king appointed Yudhishthira to a high post, and as they conversed, Virata asked him about his past, his family, and his knowledge. Yudhishthira revealed that his name was Kinka, and he belonged to the illustrious Vaivara clan. He claimed to be skilled in casting discs, and had once been a friend of Yudhishthira. An enigmatic statement that raised more questions than answers. King Virata's eyes sparkled with delight as he offered Yudhishthira a generous boon. Rule the Matsyas, my kingdom, and I shall remain under your command. You are like a god, deserving of a kingdom. The king praised Yudhishthira's prowess at this, saying that cunning gamblers were always welcome in his court. Yudhishthira requested two favors from King Virata: that he be spared disputes with low-born individuals, and that those defeated by him at this should not retain their winnings. King Virata granted these boons, promising to slay any who dared displease Yudhishthira, and banishing them from his dominions. As the audience dispersed, King Virata showered Yudhishthira with gifts, fine apparel, viands, drinks, and vehicles at his disposal. He entrusted in the bustling kingdom of Matsya. King Virata sat upon his throne, surrounded by his loyal subjects and advisors. The air was filled with the sweet scent of incense and the soft murmur of conversations. Suddenly a figure emerged from the crowd, drawing the king's attention like a magnet. This was no ordinary youth, for he radiated an aura of strength and beauty that seemed almost divinous. He approached the throne. His movements were as fluid as those of a lion on the hunt. He held in one hand a cooking ladle and a spoon, while in the other a sword with a blade as black as coal shone brightly, its presence seeming to command attention. His attire was simple, yet dignified, a stark contrast to the splendor that surrounded him. The king's eyes widened as he took in the sight of this mysterious figure. Who is this youth? King Virata asked aloud, his voice filled with curiosity and a hint of awe. He seems like a being from another world, a celestial entity who has descended upon us. His advisors and subjects looked on, equally perplexed by the stranger's appearance. The king's words hung in the air as he pondered the identity of this enigmatic figure. Just then a group of swift-footed messengers arrived at Bhima's side, bearing news from King Virata. They informed him of the king's questions and his desire to know who this remarkable individual was. Bhima listened intently, his eyes never leaving the king. As he approached the throne, I am Valeva, a cook. Bhima declared, his voice deep and resonant. I have come to offer my services in your kitchen, O king. His words were simple, yet confident, and they seemed to carry an unspoken weight of authority. The king's expression turned skeptical as he gazed at Bhima, searching for any sign of deception. But you are no ordinary cook, the king said, his voice tinged with amusement. You shine like a god among mortals, your beauty and strength awe-inspiring. I fear that cooking is beneath someone of your stature. The king's words were laced with genuine puzzlement, and Bhima's response was quick to comment. But a servant, O king, Bhima replied, his voice unwavering. My skills lie not only in the kitchen, but also in the arena of combat. I have fought against lions and elephants, and my strength is unmatched. The king's eyes widened as he listened to Bhima's words, his mind racing with the implications. Very well, King Virata said, finally, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. You may do as you please, Valeva. You shall be the superintendent of my kitchen, and I grant you whatever boons you desire. And so Bhima's disguise was cemented, at least for the time being. In the bustling streets of Virata's kingdom, a young woman named Draupadi wandered aimlessly, her long dark hair tied back in a neat braid. She wore a single piece of worn but elegant cloth, and her beauty was undeniable. Her eyes sparkled with kindness, and her smile could light up even the darkest of rooms. As she walked, men and women couldn't help but stare at her, mesmerized by her radiance. They approached her cautiously, sensing that this was no ordinary woman. Who are you? They asked, their voices filled with curiosity. Draupadi replied, Humbly, I am a Sarantai, a maidservant seeking a new home and the chance to serve a queen of the kingdom. Sushna happened upon Draupadi while gazing out from the palace balcony. She was taken aback by the young woman's stunning beauty, and poised Susha summoned Draupadi to her presence, her eyes shining with intrigue. Tell me, O beautiful one, Susha said, who are you really? You can't be just a simple maidservant. Your features are those of a goddess. Your skin is like the full moon. Your eyes resemble the autumnal lotus, and your hair is as black as the night. Draupadi smiled demurely, her voice barely above a whisper. I am but a humble servant, my queen. I have served many noble women in the past. Satyabhama, Krishna's favorite queen among them. I know how to dress hair and make fragrant garlands from flowers, like jasmine and Luvasusha's eyes narrowed, her mind racing with possibilities. I would take you into my household, she said, finally, but I fear for the king's sake he is a man consumed by passion, and your beauty might prove too great a temptation for him to resist. Draupadi listened attentively, her expression serene. Fear not, my queen, she said. I am bound to my 5 Gandharva husbands who protect me from harm. None can take me from them, nor can I be claimed by any man as if I were a common woman. Susha's face softened, and she nodded graciously. Very well, then you may join our household, but on one condition. You must never touch food that has been partaken of by another, nor wash the feet of anyone but me or my maiden. So Draupadi began her new life in Virata's kingdom, her secrets and mysteries remaining hidden from all who did not know her true nature. In a bustling city of Virata, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows, clad in a coward's attire and speaking with the rustic dialect of the countryside. Sahadeva made his way to the royal cup, and the king Virata was taken aback by the stranger's imposing presence. Shining like a bull among men, he summoned his guards to bring Sahadeva before him. As the young man entered the palace, Virata's curiosity grew. To whom do you belong? He asked, his voice filled with wonder. From where have you come? What were do you seek? I've never seen you before. The king's eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of deception in Sahadeva's rugged features. Sahadeva stood tall, his deep voice rumbling like thunder as he replied, I am Arishnema of Vaisya by birth. I was employed by the Kuru princes, the sons of Pandu, as a coward. But now I've lost touch with them and seek new service. I don't know where they are, and I fear to enter anyone's service. But yours, great king. His words were laced with sincerity, and Virata sensed that there was more to this stranger than met the eye. King's expression turned thoughtful as he examined Sahadeva. You must be a Brahmana or Kshatriya, he mused aloud. Your bearing suggests you're a lord of the earth itself. Tell me truly, what is your true nature? Virata's words were tinged with amusement, but also a hint of suspicion. Sahadeva smiled, really, his eyes glinting in the light. I am but a humble Vaisya, he said. Yeah, I possess knowledge beyond my station. I've tended to the Kuru prince's vast herds, and people know me as Tentripala. I can sense the present, past, and future of all cattle within 10 yojanas. My skills in breeding and disease prevention are renowned, and I've even discovered ways to identify auspicious bulls that grant fertility to barren women. Virata's eyes widened in awe as Sahadeva spoke, his voice weaving a spell of wonder around the king. I have 100,000 kine, he declared finally. Take charge of them all, and may they flourish under your care. With those words, Virata entrusted Sahadeva with the responsibility of managing his vast herds. As the days passed, Sahadeva proved himself to be an exceptional caretaker, expertly guiding the cattle to prosperity. Unbeknownst to Virata, the young man was none other than one of the 5 Pandava brothers, Yudhishthira's loyal brother and confidant. Yet in this new guise he lived happily among his adopted people, his true identity. In the bustling kingdom of Virata, a majestic figure emerged from the shadows. Vaisabhayana, the revered storyteller, described him as enormous in size and exquisite in beauty, adorned with ornaments typically reserved for women. His long flowing hair danced about his neck like an elephant's mane, while his conch bracelets overlaid with gold shone brightly on his arms. The ground trembled beneath his feet as he approached the palace, drawing the attention of King Virata. King, a just and wise ruler, was perplexed by this newcomer. Who is this person? He asked his courtiers, but none could provide an answer. The king's curiosity turned to wonder as he beheld the stranger's extraordinary appearance. He seemed to be both celestial and earthly, with a dark complexion reminiscent of the leader of a herd of elephants. Virata's eyes sparkled with a mix of amusement and concern as he addressed the mysterious figure. You possess great strength like a god, he said. Your youth and dark hue make you resemble an elephant leader. Your ornaments and garlands suggest a warrior, but your beauty is that of a woman. I am old and weary. Perhaps you can be my son or rule in my place." The king's words were laced with a hint of trepidation, as if he sensed that this stranger was no ordinary mortal. Arjuna, the legendary warrior, stepped forward from behind his disguise. "I sing, dance, and play instruments," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I am skilled in dance, and son, O Lord of men, assign me to teach your daughter." Uttara, Virata's eyes widened with surprise. "But Arjuna continued, my form is that of a woman, Virata. I have no father or mother. What use would it be for you to know my story?" The king's face softened, and he nodded graciously. "Very well," Virata said. "Teach my daughter and her friends the art of dance." "But, O Virata, your talents are wasted on such a task. You deserve to rule over the entire earth." Girded by the unseen, Arjuna bowed his head in gratitude. But the king's words were not mere flattery. He was genuinely impressed by the stranger's abilities and saw potential for greatness. The king consulted with his advisors and sent word that Virata was to be examined by women. They discovered that he was indeed impotent in a permanent sense. Undeterred, Virata ordered him to be sent to Uttara's apartments, where Arjuna began teaching the princess and her companions the art of singing and instrumental music. As the days passed, Virata, or Arjuna in disguise, won the hearts of the royal family with his kindness, patience, and exceptional talent. In the kingdom of Matsya, a majestic figure emerged from the horizon, his presence radiating like the sun breaking through the clouds. Vaisampayana, a sage who would later recount this tale, watched as the king's attendants pointed out the newcomer to their master. The king Virata was intrigued by the stranger's striking appearance and his keen interest in the horses that grazed in the palace grounds. Virata summoned his advisors and asked them to usher the mysterious figure into his presence. As the young man approached, he bowed respectfully and greeted the king with words of felicitation. "Victory to you, O king," he said, "and may your realm prosper." The king's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he took in the stranger's confident demeanor. "Tell me, who are you?" Virata asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "You seem to possess a deep understanding of horses, almost as if you were born to be their master." The young man smiled humbly, introducing himself as Nakila, a skilled equerry from the kingdom of Panchala. He claimed that he had once served under Yudhishthira, the eldest son of Pandu, and was renowned for his expertise in horse breeding and training. Virata's eyes widened with delight as Nakila began to recount his exploits in the service of Yudhishthira. "I can tame even the most ferocious steeds," he said proudly, "and my methods are so gentle that no animal under my care ever falls ill or weakens." The king was enchanted by Nakila's words and decided on the spot to appoint him as his royal equerry. As Nakila accepted the offer, Virata showered him with gifts and privileges. He promised to entrust him with the care of his entire horse stable and even offered him spacious quarters within the palace. But before accepting these honors, Nakila asked for permission to reveal a secret. He was in hiding, just like Yudhishthira, and had come to Matsya seeking refuge from their enemies. Virata's expression softened with understanding as he realized that this young man, so full of life and vitality, was actually one of the Pandava brothers. He praised Nakila for his bravery and asked after the well-being of Yudhishthira, who he assumed must be living a simple life in the forest far from the trappings of royalty. As the days passed, Nakila settled into his new role with ease, earning the respect and admiration of Virata's courtiers. He proved to be an invaluable asset, not only as a skilled horse breeder, but also as a charismatic figure who could diffuse tensions and lift spirits in times of crisis. And so, amidst the tranquil surroundings of Matsya, Nakila lived incognito, his true identity known only to the king, while continuing to serve. In the city of Matsya, the Pandavas, disguised as commoners, had been living incognito for 3 months under the protection of King Virata. Yudhishthira, the eldest brother, had taken on a role as a courtier and won the hearts of the king and his sons with his exceptional skills in this. He distributed the wealth he earned among his brothers, while Bhima, disguised as a cook, sold meat and delicacies to Yudhishthira. Arjuna worked in the palace inner apartments, earning money by selling worn-out clothes, which he shared with his brothers. Sahadeva, dressed as a coward, provided milk, curds, and ghee to his family, while Nakila managed the horses, earning wealth from King Virata. Draupadi, in a pitiful state, took care of her husbands and remained unrecognized by others. The Pandavas lived like this for 3 months, always on guard against danger from their enemies, who were searching for them everywhere. They watched over each other and Draupadi with great concernus. The 4th month began the grand festival in honor of Brahma was about to take place in the city of Matsya. Thousands of athletes from all over the kingdom arrived, boasting huge bodies and incredible strength like the demons called Kalakenjas. Among them was one athlete who stood out above the rest, known as Jamuta, whose prowess was renowned. This formidable warrior challenged all the other athletes to a combat, but none dared to approach him. The king of Matsya, Virata, decided that Bhima, the strongest among the Pandavas, should fight against this jinn. Reluctantly, Bhima accepted the challenge, not wanting to disobey the royal commanders. The crowd watched in awe. Bhima and Jamuta entered the arena, their muscles rippling beneath their skin like two infuriated elephants. The combat was fierce, with both warriors exchanging blows that shook the ground. Their fists clenched. They struck each other with incredible force, sending shock waves through the air. Each tried to outmaneuver the other, but neither could gain the upper hand. The battle raged on for what seemed like an eternity, with both warriors trading punches and kicks. The crowd watched in amazement as Bhima and Jamuta clashed their bodies, a blur of motion. In the end, it was Bhima who emerged victorious, seizing Jamuta by the arms and whirling him around until he was insensible. The dust-settled King Virata and his friends erupted into cheers, congratulating Bhima on his victory. The noble king rewarded Vallabha with wealth beyond measure, pleased that Bhima had brought honor to their kingdom. Overjoyed, Virata continued to challenge Bhima with various opponents, tigers, lions, elephants, and even fierce lions in the harem for the pleasure. In the city of Matsya, the mighty sons of Pritha, disguised as commoners, lived among its people for 10 months. Meanwhile, the daughter of Yajnisna, the princess of Panchala, dwelled in Sushna's apartments, serving her mistress with dedication and humility. Her presence was met with admiration by Sushna and the other women of the inner palace. As the year drew to a close, Kikeket, the formidable commander of Virata's forces, caught sight of the princess. Enchanted by her beauty, he was overcome with desire like a hunter entranced by his prey. His senses inflamed, Kikeket approached Sushna, seeking her counsel on the mysterious woman. "Who is this enchanting lady?" he asked, his voice dripping with infatuation. "Her beauty is unmatched, like that of the gods. She seems to have cast a spell over me, leaving me helpless and yearning for her presence." Kikeket begged Sushna to reveal the princess' identity and persuade her to accept him as her lover. Sushna, though taken aback by Kikeket's words, remained composed. She knew that the princess was already married to Arjuna, one of the Pandavas, and that she had been living in exile with them. However, Sushna did not intervene, allowing Kikeket to proceed with his intentions. The commander then approached Draupadi herself, his words dripping with flattery and desire. "Who are you, O beautiful one?" he asked, his voice trembling with longing. "Your face shines like the moon, your eyes are as lovely as lotus petals, and your speech is as melodious as the cuckoo's song." Kikeket lavish Draupadi with praise, comparing her to the goddess Lakshmi and other celestial beings. Draupadi, however, remained unimpressed by Kikeket's words. She knew that she was a married woman bound by duty and loyalty to her husband. "You desire me," she said calmly, "but I am not worthy of your attention. I am but a lowly servant employed in the humble task of dressing hair." Draupadi gently rebuked Kikeket, reminding him of the importance of morality and fidelity. Kikeket, however, was undeterred by Draupadi's words. His desire for her had reached a fever pitch, and he began to speak with increasing boldness and arrogance. "You should not disregard me," he said, his voice laced with menace. "I am the true ruler of this kingdom, and you are but a lowly servant. I will confer upon you all the luxuries and comforts at my disposal, if only you will accept me as your lover." Draupadi stood firm against Kikeket's advances, her words dripping with wisdom and dignity. In the midst of the kingdom's festivities, Kikeket, a man consumed by maddening lust, approached his sister-in-law, Sushna, with a desperate plea, his eyes burning with desire. He begged her to find a way to make Sarantrai, the beautiful and virtuous wife of Draupadi, accept him. Sushna, moved by Kikeket's anguish and the anxiety it caused for Krishna, took pity on him. She devised a plan to save Sarantrai from Kikeket's unwanted advances. "Procure viands and wines for me," she instructed her nephew, "and when I send my Sarantrai to fetch wine, you can humor her in solitude." Vasapaya recounts that Kikeket, eager to please Sushna, hastened to prepare a lavish feast, employing skilled cooks to create an array of delicious dishes and drinks worthy of a king as the preparations Near completion, Sushna instructed Sarintrai to visit Kikikazabad under the guise of bringing wine. But when Sarintrai heard the requests, she hesitated, recalling the shameless nature of Kikika and her own vows as a wife. "I will not go to his quarters," she told Sushna firmly, "for I fear he will insult me." Sushna reassured her that no harm would come. But Sarintrai's apprehension was palpable with a golden vessel in hand, and tears streaming down her face. Sarintrai set out for Kikikazabad. As she walked, she mentally prayed to the gods for protection and invoked their truth, pleading not to be overpowered by Kikika in that moment of vulnerability. The sun god Surya took notice of her plight and dispatched a powerful Rakshasa to watch over her discreetly. Meanwhile, in Kikika's chambers, the Sutta son waited anxiously for Sarintrai's arrival. When he finally caught sight of her, his eyes widened with joy, like that of a traveler who has secured passage across the river. Unbeknownst to him, a Rakshasa stood guard over Sarintrai, shielding her from harm as she entered Kikika's presence. In the kingdom of Matsya, a Sutta son named Kikika had grown arrogant and bold. One day, he spotted Draupadi, the beautiful wife of the Pandavas, and was immediately smitten by her charms. He approached her with an offer to make her his mistress, showering her with luxurious gifts and tempting her with fine wines. Draupadi, however, was not easily swayed. She had been sent by the princess to fetch wine for a gathering, and she politely declined Kikika's advances, saying that she would bring the wine as requested. But Kikika's lustful eyes did not take no for an answer. He seized her arm, trying to drag her away. Draupadi was furious. She had never been unfaithful to her husbands, and by the truth of her oath, she vowed to expose Kikika's wickedness with a fierce determination. She shook off his grasp and ran towards the court of King Virata, screaming for protection. Kikika followed her, grabbing her hair and kicking her in front of the king. But just as he was about to strike again, a powerful Rakshasa intervened, sending Kikika tumbling to the ground. The king's guards rushed to Draupadi's aid, but King Virata seemed more concerned with maintaining his dignity than punishing the wrongdoer. Bhima, one of the Pandavas, was seething with rage at the sight of his beloved wife being insulted. He gnashed his teeth and prepared to attack Kikika. But Yudhishthira restrained him, ordering Bhima to calm down and pretend that nothing had happened. Draupadi, still shaken by the ordeal, approached the king's court, her eyes blazing with anger. She rebuked King Virata for not protecting her from Kikika's advances, calling him a robber who did not deserve to rule. The courtiers applauded Draupadi's bravery and censured Kikika's wickedness. As the court watched, Draupadi ran towards the apartments of Sushna, her hair disheveled and her eyes red with tears. Sushna, the queen, asked her who had caused her distress, but Draupadi simply revealed that Kikika had insulted her while she was on an errand for the princess. The scene ended with Draupadi's departure to the apartments of Sushna. Still weeping and still seeking protection from her husbands, the courtiers were left to ponder the bravery of the Pandava's wife, who had stood up to Kikika's lustful advances with courage and dignity. In the midst of a grand assembly, the Suta's son had unleashed his venomous tongue upon the illustrious princess Krishna, leaving her reeling with anguish. The beautiful daughter of Drupada, known for her dark hue and slender waist, retreated to her quarters, seeking solace in the stillness of the night. As she went through the motions of ablutions, washing her body and clothes with water, Krishna's mind wandered to the distressing events that had transpired. The thoughts swirled like a tempest, searching for a way to dispel the darkness that shrouded her heart. "What am I to do?" she pondered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whither shall I go? How can my purpose be effected?" The weight of her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. But then, like a beacon in the night, Krishna's thoughts turned to Bhima, the mighty warrior, and her beloved husband. With a sense of resolve, she rose from her bed, leaving the comfort of her quarters behind. The darkness seemed to part as she made her way towards Bhimasna's chambers, guided by the light of her devotion. As she entered, the room was bathed in an otherworldly glow, as if the very presence of Drupada's daughter and the high-souled Bhima had ignited a fire that would not be extinguished. Krishna found Bhima in the cooking apartments, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. She approached him with the eagerness of a wild animal, her heart pounding in anticipation. The princess of Panchala flung her arms around Bhimasna's neck, embracing him like a creeper enfolding a mighty sala tree on the banks of the Gomesha. She wrapped herself around him. Krishna's touch awakened Bhima from his slumber. He stirred like a lioness roused by the presence of her mate. In the stillness of the forest, the princess addressed him in a voice as sweet as the sound of a strung instrument playing the Gandhara. "Not arise, arise. Why dost thou lie down as one dead? Surely he that is not dead never suffers. A wicked wretch to live, the Messiah's mighty arms rose, and he sat upon his couch overlaid with rich fabrics. He gazed at Krishna. His beloved wife, her color gone, her eyes sunken with worry. For what purpose hast thou come hither in such haste? He asked, his voice low and urgent, "Tell me everything, my love. I must know the truth. Whether it be pleasurable or painful, agreeable or disagreeable, tell me all." Draupadi's voice trembled as she spoke to her husband Yudhishthira. What pain could be greater than having you as my husband? She asked, her eyes brimming with tears. "You know all my sorrows, yet you ask me about them. The shame I suffered at the hands of the predicament in the assembly hall still haunts me." She spoke, memories flooded back to Draupadi's mind. She recalled the day Kikek, a wicked man and brother-in-law of King Virata, had kicked her in public. Who else but myself could endure such cruel treatment? She asked Yudhishthira, her voice heavy with emotion. Draupadi's gaze turned to her husband, who sat quietly beside her. She couldn't help but feel the deep sense of sorrow and injustice. What is the value of life when you don't see my suffering, even though I'm concerned by it? She asked Yudhishthira. Her words, laced with pain, Yudhishthira's eyes dropped to the ground as Draupadi continued to speak. She told him about Kikika's daily harassment, how he would call her a and try and ask her to become his wife. "My heart is bursting like a ripe fruit," she said, her voice cracking with anguish. Draupadi's thoughts turned to Yudhishthira's own actions, which had led to their downfall. She remembered the days when he would gamble away their kingdom, wealth, and even herself. Who else but a desperate gambler would risk everything for the thrill of winning? She asked, her words synced with sorrow as she spoke. Draupadi's mind flashed back to Yudhishthira's former glory. She recalled the days when he was adored by kings and sages, when his kitchen was filled with 100,000 maidservants, feeding guests day and night. That mighty monarch who gave away 1,000 nishkas every day is now reduced to casting this for survival, she said, her voice heavy with sadness. Draupadi's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at Yudhishthira, who had become a courtier in King Virata's court. "Behold the mighty, and once worshipped by the entire earth, now serving another for sustenance," she said, her words dripping with sorrow. As Draupadi finished speaking, her voice trailed off, and Yudhishthira looked up at her, his eyes filled with regret. The room fell silent, the only sound being the quiet sobs of Draupadi, who was overwhelmed by the weight of their misfortunes. The sun had barely risen over the kingdom of Virata, casting a warm glow over the bustling streets. In the midst of this tranquility, Draupadi's heart was heavy with sorrow. She stood in the courtyard of the palace, her eyes fixed on Arjuna, who was now known as Vallabha, the cook. Draupadi's voice trembled as she spoke to Bhima. "O Virata, I have a great grief that I must share with you. Who can bear to see you, O bull of the Virata race, reduced to cooking in this palace? It is a fate so unworthy of your valor and strength." She paused, her eyes welling up with tears as she continued. Draupadi's words poured out like a river, describing Arjuna's ignominious disguise. "When you fight with elephants, the women lull, and I am filled with distress," she said. "And when you wrestle with lions and tigers in the palace courtyard, Kekiai thinks me attached to you, and Sarantrai weeps for her lover." Draupadi's words were laced with anguish as she spoke of Arjuna's transformation from a mighty warrior to a dancing master, that youth who vanquished all celestials and men on his own chariot is now entertaining women with songs. She said, her voice cracking with emotion. Dhamma listened intently, his expression somber. He knew the depth of Draupadi's sorrow, for he too was afflicted by their disguises. But it was not just Arjuna that weighed heavily on Draupadi's heart. Her gaze drifted to Sahadeva, who tended kine in the guise of a coward. "O Bharata," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "beholding that beloved brother of thine, that bull among men employed by Matsya in looking after his kine, I am filled with woe." Her words were punctuated by sobs as she spoke of Sahadeva's noble disposition and rectitude. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky. Draupadi's lament continued. She spoke of Nakula, who trained horses for Virata, and Yudhishthira, who was lost to her, a distant memory. Her words were a testament to the depth of her love for her husbands and her longing for their return. In the midst of this sorrow, Bhima listened attentively, his heart heavy with compassion. He knew that Draupadi's grief was not just for herself, but for all of them, for the life they had left behind, for the disguises they wore, and for the uncertainty of their future. As she finished speaking, Bhima wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as the weight of their collective sorrow bore down on them both. In the grand halls of Virata's palace, a poignant scene unfolded. Draupadi, once the proud princess of Panthela, now lived in disguise as a humble servant named Saranthrai. Her eyes, once bright with joy and laughter, had dimmed to reflect the sorrow that weighed upon her heart as she spoke to Bhima. Her voice trembled with emotion. Alas, I am but a shadow of my former self, living under the command of Queen Sushna, forced to endure the hardships of servitude. The thought of returning to prosperity and happiness seems distant, like a fleeting dream that vanishes at dawn. She paused, her gaze drifting away as memories flooded her mind. Draupadi's words were laced with resignation, yet beneath the surface a deep sadness. See, prosperity and adversity are but two sides of the same wheel, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Victory can turn to defeat in an instant, and I live in hope that fate will soon shift in our favor. Her eyes, locked onto Bhima's, filled with a plea for understanding. Why do you not regard me as one dead? She asked, her voice cracking with emotion. I have heard the wise words of old, those who give may beg, those who slay may be slain, and those who overthrow others may themselves be overthrown by foes. Destiny is unfathomable, and I await its benevolence. As she spoke, Draupadi's hands rose to her face, as if to shield herself from the memories that haunted her. Behold them, she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. The marks of servitude on my hands, once they were soft and unblemished, but now they bear the scars of a life spent pounding sandal for others. Her eyes welled up with tears as she showed him the corns that had formed on her palms. Bhima's face contorted in anguish as he beheld his wife's suffering. He covered his face with those delicate hands, marked by the hardships she endured, and wept silently. Draupadi's words had stirred his heart to compassion, and he held her hands tightly, tears streaming down his own face. As they sat together in sorrow, Vaisampayana watched with him, a witness to the depth of their pain. The mighty son of Kunti, once invincible on the battlefield, now shed copious tears for the woman who had been his companion in joy and adversity. In the grand halls of Virata's kingdom, a somber mood had settled over the royal family. Emma, a mighty and loyal brother of Yudhishthira, stood before Draupadi, his voice heavy with emotion as he recounted the injustices that had been done to her. Fie on my arms and the Gandhava of Falgunite, he began, for I am powerless to protect you from the cruel hands of Kikeka. If only Yudhishthira were not present, I would have unleashed a carnage upon Virata's court, crushing the pride of that drunken Sudha with my mighty strength. His eyes flashed with anger as he remembered the day he had seen Krishna kicked by Kikeka in full view of the king and his courtiers. I was consumed by a fierce desire for slaughter, he confessed to Draupadi, but Yudhishthira's glance stayed my hand, and I have held back ever since. The weight of their exile bore down upon Bhima like a physical burden. He spoke of the kingdom they had lost, the Kauravas who still lived, and the cruel fate that had befallen them all. I am tormented by the thought of those abominable acts, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Draupadi's eyes welled up with tears as she listened to Bhima's words. She knew the depth of his sorrow, for she too had suffered at the hands of Kikeka. He has sought me out, taunting me with his wicked intentions, she said, her voice trembling. I have tried to resist him, but he is relentless in his pursuit. Bhima's face darkened as he listened to Draupadi's tale. He recalled the day Kikeka had kicked her in the presence of Yudhishthira, and himself the king's failure to intervene or punish the Sudha for his transgression. I will not rest until I have avenged this insult. Bhima bowed, his voice low and menacing as he spoke. Krishna hid her face in Bhima's breast, overcome with grief. Bhima wrapped his arms around her, trying to comfort her as best he could. He wiped away her tears with his hands, speaking words of reason and sense into her ear, and then, filled with wrath, Bhima turned his attention to the wicked Kikeka, licking his lips in anticipation of the battle to come. I will smash him like an earthen pot dashed upon a stone, he vowed, his eyes blazing with fury. In the midst of a somber scene, the relatives of Kikeka arrived at the palace, their faces etched with grief as they beheld his lifeless body. The once powerful warrior lay mangled and broken like a tortoise dragged from its watery home to dry land. As the Kikekas surrounded him, their own bodies began to tremble with fear, their bristles standing on end. The sight of Bhima's brutal handwork was too much for them to bear. They quickly gathered around and decided that it would be best to take Kikeka outside so they could perform the necessary funeral rites. As they lifted his body off the ground, they caught sight of Trisha reclining on a pillar, her faultless limbs a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding before her. The Kikekas' eyes narrowed as they gazed at Krishna, their anger and resentment simmering just below the surface. They accused her of being responsible for Kikeka's Demas claiming that she was an unchaste woman who had lured him to his death. The Sutas demanded that Virata grant permission to cremate both Krishna and Kikeka together as a way to honor the deceased warrior. Virata, aware of the Sutas' power and influence, reluctantly agreed to their demands. But just as it seemed like the worst was over for Krishna, the Kikekas approached her with violence in their hearts. They seized her, binding her slender waist and placing her on a bier ready to take her away to the cremation grounds. Krishna's cries for help pierced the air as she wailed aloud for her husbands Jayadratha, Vijaya, and Jayatsena. She begged them to come to her aid, but they were nowhere to be found. Instead, it was Vema who sprang into action, responding to Krishna's pleas with a fierce determination without hesitation. Vema leaped out of his bed, his mighty body swelling with rage. As he prepared for battle, he donned a disguise and made his way out of the palace, careful not to be seen by anyone. Climbing over a wall and into the cemetery, he found the Kikekas gathered around Krishna's bier. Vema's eyes scanned the scene before him, taking in the sight of the Sutas surrounding Krishna. His gaze settled on the tree nearby, its trunk as wide as 10 Vimas. With a mighty roar, Vema grasped the tree and uprooted it just like an elephant. He placed the tree on his shoulders, its branches swaying ominously in the air. The Kikekas trembled with fear as they beheld Vemas approach, their faces pale with terror. They begged each other to flee, but it was too late. Vema charged towards them. He uprooted tree held high like a mast. The sound of In the bustling kingdom of Matsya, a sense of unease settled over its citizens. Like Gadar, Cloud, the Sutas, mighty sons of the nobility, had been slain by the Gandharvas, and their bodies lay scattered across the earth like shattered mountain peaks. As news of the tragedy reached King Virata's palace, his subjects rushed to inform him of the calamity. They warned him that if Sarantrae, the princess of Panchala, returned to the kingdom, it would be a disaster waiting to happen. For Sarantrae was not just any ordinary woman. She was a radiant beauty with a presence that could stir men's passions. The king listened intently to their words and then addressed his queen, Sushnat. He instructed her to convey a message to Sarantrae, saying, "Blessed be you, O fair-faced Sarantrae. Go wherever you please." The king has been alarmed at the defeat already experienced at the hands of the Gandharvas, but little did the king know that his words would soon reach Sarantrae's ears through a different channel. Vema, the prince of the Pandavas, had rescued her from the clutches of the Sutas and had brought her safely to the kingdom. As Krishna, accompanied by Vema, entered the city, she was met with a mixture of fear and awe. The citizens, still reeling from the news of the Sutas' defeat, fled in all directions, shutting their eyes as if they could escape the reality of the situation. Meanwhile, Draupadi, the princess of Panchala, saw Vema standing at the gate of the kitchen like an elephant of gigantic proportions. Vema noticed her gaze and smiled, his face radiant with kindness, hearing these words of hers. In obedience to whom those persons were hitherto living in the sea, he said, they will henceforth range here, regarding themselves as freed from the death. As Krishna made her way towards the palace, she was met by Virhanula, one of the king's daughters-in-law. The young woman approached Krishna with a mixture of curiosity and concern, asking her about her ordeal and how the Sutas had been slain. Krishna recounted her story, telling Virhanula that Vema had rescued her from the clutches of the Sutas and brought her safely to the kingdom. But as she spoke, Krishna couldn't help but noticed the pain in Virhanula's eyes. The young woman seemed troubled by something, and Krishna sensed that there was more to her story than met the eyes. They entered the palace. Draupadi was greeted by Sushna, who conveyed the king's message to her. But instead of heeding the king's words, Sarantrae requested permission to stay in the kingdom for 13 more days. She explained that the Gandharvas would be highly obliged. The city and its surrounding provinces were abuzz with the news of the slaughter of Kikek and his brothers. People couldn't believe their eyes. How could such mighty warriors fall to the invisible hands of the Gandharvas? It was whispered in awe that for bravery both Valeva and Kikeka were renowned warriors, but it was also known that wicked Kikeka had a dark reputation. He was an oppressor of men and the dishonorer of other people's wives. As the news spread, it seemed to fuel a sense of pride among the people. They began to speak of the invincible Kikeka who had slayed hostile ranks with ease. Little did they know that their admiration would soon turn to shock and dismay, for in the midst of this celebration a group of spies returned from their mission to search for the Pandavas. These spies, employed by Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana, had scoured various villages, towns, and kingdoms, following every lead, every hint that might bring them closer to their quarry. They had searched through dense forests, Teeming with deer and other animals, overgrown with trees and creepers of divers kind, they had ventured into arbors of matted woods, plants, and creepers of every species, but to no avail us. They entered the court of King Duryodhana, seated alongside his trusted advisors Drona, Karna, Kripa, and the high-souled Bhishma. The spies bowed before him. "O Lord of men," they said, "we have searched far and wide, o'er the sons of Pandu in that mighty forest we have come every inch of it, but to no avail. We have failed to discover their track or their present residence." They explained how they had followed the charioteers of the Pandavas, making inquiries along the way, only to find out that neither the sons of Pritha nor the Chasprisha were in Dwarava. The spies' words hung in the air like a challenge. King Duryodhana's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed a glimmer of frustration. He knew that time was running out. The Pandavas could strike at any moment. "What should we do next?" he asked, his voice firm, but laced with uncertainty. The spies' words were like a bound to King Duryodhana's wounded pride. They told him about Kikika, the commander of King Matsya, who had been vanquished by the invisible Gandharvas during the hours of darkness. The news was like a breath of fresh air. It seemed that their enemies were not invincible after all. With renewed hope and determination, King Duryodhana turned to his advisors and asked for their counsel on what to do next. The court fell silent, each advisor pondering the question. It was clear that in the court of Hastinapur, King Duryodhana sat in contemplation, his mind racing with the news brought by his spies. They had reported that the 5 Pandava brothers, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Yudhishthira, were living in disguise, their 13th year of exile almost at an end. Duryodhana's eyes narrowed as he pondered the implications. If the Pandavas succeeded in remaining undetected for the remainder of their exile, they would be free to return to Hastinapur and reclaim their rightful place on the throne. Duryodhana's thoughts were interrupted by his courtiers, who stood before him expectantly. He rose from his seat, his voice firm as he addressed them. "It is uncertain whether we can uncover the Pandavas' whereabouts," he said, "but I charge you all to use your cunning and intelligence to track them down. They are devoted to their vow of truth, and if they remain undiscovered, they will return with a fierce determination to exact their revenge on the Kuru kingdom." As Duryodhana spoke, his words dripped with a sense of foreboding. He knew that the Pandavas were not ordinary men, but mighty warriors who had been trained in the arts of combat from a young age. Their wrath would be terrible to behold, and he feared for the safety of the kingdom if they were allowed to return unchecked. Karna, one of Duryodhana's most trusted advisors, spoke up. Next, his voice was low and measured as he suggested that more spies be sent out to track down the Pandavas. "Let them wander through the kingdoms and provinces," Karna said. "Let them search in palaces, shrines, and mines, and in all the other places where a man might hide." He paused for a moment before adding, "And let our spies be well disguised, that they may blend in with the people and gather information without arousing suspicion." Duryodhana's second brother, Dussasana, stood up to speak next. His voice was cold and calculating as he advocated for even greater measures to be taken to capture the Pandavas. "Let only those spies who are most trusted go after them," he said, "and let them receive their rewards in advance, that they may work with all haste and diligence." Dussasana's words were laced with a sinister intent, as if he reveled in the idea of capturing his enemies. As the discussion continued, it became clear that Duryodhana was determined to do whatever it took to prevent the Pandavas from returning to Hastinapur. He dismissed all concerns and doubts, urging his courtiers to act with speed and cunning to uncover the whereabouts of the 5 brothers, and so a new wave of spies was dispatched armed with instructions. In the midst of war-torn Kurukshetra, the wise sage Vaisampayana stood before Drona, his voice filled with conviction. "Drona," he said, "you know as well as I that the sons of Pandu are not ordinary men. They possess a strength that cannot be defeated and a discernment that guides them through even the most treacherous of times." Drona's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the weight of Vaisampayana's words. He knew the Pandavas well, their bravery, their intelligence, and their unwavering commitment to virtue. "Persons like the sons of Pandu never perish," he declared, his voice steady and firm. "Brave and skilled in every sense, intelligent and with senses under control, virtuous and grateful and obedient to the virtuous Yudhishthira. They are a force to be reckoned with." Vaisampayana nodded in agreement, his eyes shining with a deep understanding of the situation. "They follow their eldest brother, who is conversant with the conclusions of policy and virtue and profit," he explained. "He is attached to them as a father, and he strictly adheres to virtue and is firm in truth." Drana's expression turned thoughtfully, his mind weighing the possibilities to Yudhishthira. He eldest brother was indeed a beacon of hope for his people, gifted with great intelligence. He never injured anyone and always obeyed his younger brothers. His devotion to them was unwavering, and they in turn were fiercely loyal to him. Why should not Yudhishthira be able to restore the prosperity of his brothers? Drona mused aloud. Vasampayana's voice rose in support of Drana's words. Men such as these never perish, he declared, his eyes burning with a deep conviction.